everyone. I'm Dave Hill, and I'm the engineering manager supporting the Oculus Browser team at Facebook Reality Labs. I'm currently spending a lot of my time focusing on the WebXR developer ecosystem, working to make VR on the web an important part of the Oculus user experience, and to make Oculus Browser a viable VR platform for developers like yourselves. I'm going to cover two topics today. First, I want to talk about how we think about the WebXR developer ecosystem, where it is now, and where it's headed. And second, I'll talk about what we've got on our roadmap to help the WebXR developer ecosystem succeed. A year and a half ago, December of 2019, we shipped the first on-by-default version of WebXR in Oculus Browser. Things have come a long way since then, but in a lot of ways, it's still early days. So what might the progression of the immersive web developer ecosystem look like? Here's my take on it. This may not be exactly right, but I think it's close, and it's a useful framework to explain how Oculus Browser is thinking about our investments in this space. As a WebXR developer working in the emerging state of the ecosystem, you're still missing key tools, features, or frameworks that you need to build high-quality content. Core things just don't exist. By the time the ecosystem evolves to capable, it's possible to build high-quality content, but it's still very hard. You need a lot of specialized and low-level knowledge. You're really down in the details, grinding it out. At the same time, you do have the core tools and frameworks you need to be successful. Solid 3D rendering engines, frameworks or libraries that cover all the core functionality that you need, performance and debugging tools, and at least some approximation of the content creation and ingestion pipeline. Eventually, the ecosystem progresses to accessible. Accessible is how I would describe the native VR developer ecosystem today. There are mature frameworks like Unity and Unreal that meet almost all of your needs. There's a whole ecosystem of tools and content, outsourcing, training, developer support. Some of the complexity has been abstracted away. You still need to understand quite a bit about 3D and VR development, but there's a lot more already in place to help you succeed. You don't need to know all of the low-level details. And finally, eventually, you get to broadly accessible. VR development is accessible to all web developers. Almost all of the complexity and the need for specialized knowledge has been abstracted away. Developers can really just focus on the experience they're trying to build. Life is good. Now, you can make your own assessment of where you think we are in this journey. From my point of view, I believe we're still somewhere between emerging and capable. Things are a lot better than they were a few years ago. There are excellent 3D rendering engines and frameworks that provide the fundamentals of WebXR development, but there are also a lot of challenges. You still need to get down into the low-level details to build something performant and polished. You still run up against gaps in existing tools and libraries. You probably still find yourself building functionality from scratch that exists in a refined form in native frameworks like Unity and Unreal. On the Oculus Browser team, we're focusing on areas where we think we can have an impact to help get things squarely into the capable realm. But how do we get there? So let's start with a digression. If somebody you knew was just getting into VR today, what are the essential games or experiences that you would tell them they need to check out? For me, Beat Saber is an obvious one. It's fun, it has broad appeal, and it's a game that you can really only truly experience in VR. I believe the key ingredient for the success of the WebXR ecosystem is that there are several must-have web-based VR experiences like that. Not necessarily games, but things that become a core part of most people's VR experiences. Mass market appeal, clear value in VR, polished and inspiring. Active Theory's Secret Sky event earlier this year was probably the closest thing yet that I've seen to this. It was beautiful and compelling. It had broad appeal. It had a clear better in VR hook, and it played to the strengths of the web. Experiences with that kind of quality and broad appeal are what we need in order to demonstrate that the web is a viable platform for VR. The more clearly we can show that, the more investment in the WebXR developer ecosystem we'll see. More investments in frameworks, more and better tools, more platforms and hardware supporting WebXR, and all of that in turn will lead to more developers building even better WebXR experiences, and that will start to drive a virtuous cycle in the ecosystem. So, where is the Oculus Browser team focusing to try and get that flywheel moving? First of all, we're adding core WebXR functionality. We just shipped WebXR hand tracking. The Oculus Browser team was deeply involved in contributing to the spec and driving to get this out to developers quickly. We also contributed hand models into the WebXR input profile library so that anyone can easily get hand tracking working in their WebXR app on any hand tracking enabled device. We're close to shipping support for WebXR layers. This feature enables high quality, high performance display of video content by providing access to compositor layers. Video streaming is a core strength of the web, and compositor layers really allow it to shine in WebXR. Compositor layers also unlock quality improvements and performance gains in a variety of other scenarios. And then building off of compositor layers, we're really excited about the possibility that something like DOM layers will unlock. Now this one's on a longer timeline. It's not even part of the WebXR spec yet, but the goal is to bring the power of DOM-based UI into your immersive WebXR experience. I think this will be a game changer. 2D UI is one of the web's superpowers, and this will light up functionality in WebXR that would be hard to match in a native VR engine. We're also making investments in developer documentation. Look, building VR apps is hard, even if you're a native developer. We're working to publish best practices and guidance on how to build high quality, high performance experiences when running an Oculus browser. In the current state of the WebXR developer ecosystem, this kind of low-level information is critical to building great experiences. We're also working on updating and improving the breadth of WebXR development or documentation available on the Oculus developer website. Also, Facebook recently joined Open Web Docs as a lead funder, and the Oculus Browser team helped to make that happen. We plan to advocate for investments in documentation that will benefit developers targeting browsers on all XR devices, including Oculus Browser. Oculus has learned a lot about supporting native VR developers, and the Oculus Browser team is working to adapt those learnings to benefit web developers, particularly when it comes to developer tools. A great example of this is the Oculus Developer Hub. This tool was created specifically to address workflow pain points of native developers, and it turns out to be just the ticket for web developers too. You can easily turn off the proximity sensor so your headset doesn't go to sleep if you set it on your desk. You can use ADB over Wi-Fi to test and debug your headset without a USB cable plugged in the side of your head. And you can create custom commands to streamline your workflow. What's more, we just added our first web developer-focused feature to it. You can now send URLs from your laptop direct to Oculus Browser. Another tool that we've been working to enable for web developers is RenderDoc for Oculus. Now, there are still a few rough edges to work out here, but this is an invaluable tool for graphics debugging and understanding graphics performance. RenderDoc will allow you to capture a frame of your experience and view the state of the graphics pipeline for each draw call. And even more so, and beyond that, it also provides call-by-call performance breakdown so you can easily identify which specific draw calls are impacting your performance the most. That last feature is incredibly valuable. Almost every time I crack open a RenderDoc trace, I'm surprised to see which objects are actually the most expensive to render. It's never the ones you think it's going to be. Profiling really is the first and most important step in optimizing, and RenderDoc is a great tool for that. We're also supporting the individuals and teams who are jumping into the deep end today and building and shipping experiences on WebXR and Oculus Browser. We did a first round of developer research earlier this year and received a ton of great feedback, both around developer friction and also around user experience gaps and frictions that impact WebXR developers indirectly. As an example of that, I mentioned that we made it easier for developers to send URLs to their headset using ODH. But that was an easy, low-hanging fruit workflow improvement, and we're happy to ship it. But we know that Oculus Browser users face that same friction getting URLs into their headset, and that friction matters even more to WebXR developers. Addressing user-facing issues like that is also part of our focus. We're working to respond to all the feedback that we gathered, and we'll likely run another round of research later this year. In the meantime, if you're building a WebXR app or framework, please reach out. We learn almost as much from developers reaching out with questions as we do from our more structured research studies. It provides an incredibly helpful signal on where we have gaps and where we can do better. Lastly, we're working to get our hands dirty building some WebXR experiences ourselves. We just added WebXR hand support to 3D and 360 photos on Facebook.com, and we're looking to build more content in the coming months. Our goal here is to develop more informed points of view on best practices, pain points, and functionality gaps, and share what we learn with the WebXR developer community as samples, best practices, or whatever makes the most sense. Looking at all of this, you can see how we're prioritizing our investments to help move the developer ecosystem towards that capable state. We're focused on filling in key gaps for developers and users, and on providing the tools and documentation necessary to dig into the low-level details that developers need to grapple with in order to build great VR experiences today. We believe we're focused on the right things to help move the ecosystem forward, but we're also conscious of the fact that this is an evolving space and that we have a lot to learn. So if you have feedback, we want to hear from you. I talked earlier about how showing off great WebXR content is a key to advancing the developer ecosystem, and we have a great platform from which to do that. Oculus Browser is one of the most used apps on the Quest platform, and a lot of people see the new tab page every day. We use that surface to showcase immersive web content we think our users will enjoy, and we're always on the lookout for great content to feature. If you have a WebXR app that you think we should consider, please tell us about it. You can find a submission form at the URL listed on the slide, and we recently updated and published some guidance on what we'll look for when evaluating content submissions to make the process more understandable. And you know what? Even if you have an experience that's not quite there yet, please consider submitting it anyways. We may be able to provide feedback and advice to help you get it over the finish line. And with that, I'll wrap it up. I'm excited about how far WebXR has come, and I'm even more excited about where it's going. I look forward to seeing the amazing experiences that you're going to build. And if there's anything we on the Oculus Browser team can do to help you be successful, please reach out. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the summit.
Hello, Dave.
Hey.
It's good to see you again.
Hi, Dave.
Yeah, thanks. Hello.
Thanks for joining us today. We just have a couple of quick questions. Yeah, and one of them is about WebXR's web speech API and the support around voice input, and if you've got any feedback there that you'd like to share.
So it's not something that's currently on our roadmap. Obviously, we support kind of the core microphone APIs, that kind of thing. We haven't really looked into speech yet. I think it hasn't come up a lot. So, I think folks have my email address. Like, it'd be good to kind of hear more like what people are thinking about that, and help us understand how to think about prioritizing it.
The only way you'll know is if people ask, right?
Yeah.
All right. Somebody's asking if will there be a plugin or extension support in the Oculus browser in the future?
It's a great question. Again, this one comes up a lot. We always get this, especially around things like password managers. It's a tough one technically. So Oculus Browser is based off of the Android version of Chromium. There's no extension support on Android, Chromium right now. And so it's a fairly big lift for us to figure out how to kind of get that in there. So we're thinking about it, but it's not coming in the immediate future for sure.
I'm sure it's in your roadmap somewhere. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Last question. Do you have anything to share on web payments in the Oculus browser? That was something somebody else asked.
Yeah, so this is again, we've heard this a bunch. We are looking into it. I think both through the lens of like, can we just make it easier to kind of have your credit card in there, as well as like, is there something, kind of more fully into web payments? We know it's a pain point. Don't really have anything kind of concrete to announce right now, but yeah, definitely hear the feedback loud and clear, and we'll hopefully have more to share there in the future.
All right. Well, I think that's a great way to end. Thank you for taking those questions. I know so many people have questions about Oculus, right? So thank you so much for being here today on behalf of the WebXR Developer Summit and the team. Thank you for joining us.